them a chat about me just one time. Me live the life, love money, that's two crimes. What will be my destiny? Me say silly of me to think that I could ever get away with crime. What will I do? Hey.
When they come for you, check it. I ain't got nowhere to go, nothing to lose. I'm lost. Who riding for Cleo? Hot like Ultra Reels with my back to the wall. I put my gat on all y'all. Replace your players ball with the 911 call. Situations I've been in got me capable of sinning. You grinning? Watch me speech, sticky ass like minning. Letting it off, setting it off in beginning. Penning these ill rhymes, representing ill women. Said it.
I suggest
On the
y'all set it off. I suggest y'all set it off. Come on now, set it off. Set it off on the left, y'all set it off on the right, y'all set it off. Come on now, set it off. Set it off, I suggest y'all set it off. I suggest y'all set it off. Come on now, set it off. Set it off on the left, y'all set it off on the right, y'all set it off. Come on now, set it off. Set it off, I suggest y'all set it off. I suggest y'all set it off. Come on now, set it off. Set it off on the left, y'all set it off on the right, y'all set it off. Come on now, set it off. Set it off, I suggest y'all set it off. I suggest y'all set it off. Come on now, set it off. Set it off on the left, y'all set it off on the right, y'all set it off. Come on now, set it off. Set it off, I suggest y'all set it off. I suggest y'all set it off. Come on now, set it off.
Hello, 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 everyone.
Hello.
Wow, this is so exciting. Hello, Christina.
Hi, Kim.
Yes, missing you. Oh, I can't wait. First of all, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I cannot thank you enough. My name is Kimberly Dodson. I'm a performer within the American theater industry and the founding deviser of Everybody Black.
And I'm Christina Franklin. I'm a director, writer, theater educator, and also core leader of Everybody Black.
And thank you all again for joining us for our inaugural episode of the Village series presented by Everybody Black. And first, before we jump in, I just want to tell you a little bit about who we are as an organization. So Janae, our lovely Janae, will be running our slides. So Janae, will you take us to that first slide about who we are? So we were founded this summer, and we are led and founded by Black women and femme theater workers from different facets of the theater industry. Everybody Black is a membership organization whose goal is to ensure that the American theater industry is not only anti-racist, but pro-Black. And our mission is to unite Black theater workers, from those behind the table to those at the front of the house, to leverage our power and transform our industry. And in order to fulfill this mission, we are building community. We'd like to be a home base for Black theater workers to connect in safety and solidarity, and to unite all those interested in building Black power and to transform the American theater industry. We will run and support campaigns, run and foster successful campaigns to create an equitable workplace, dismantling the racist systems that profit off of Black theater workers, and train and educate our community on the ways in which our industry upholds white supremacist systems and how we can take collective action to end them. Now, today you are at the Village series, and the Village series was created to be one answer to our first tenet of building community. The Village series is a conversation series that will happen once a month we're hoping. And we will cover a wide range of topics, from this to therapy, to hair braiding, to highlighting other Black theater workers who are doing the work to transform our industry, as well as probably a couple times just our core leaders discussing a topic. So please keep in touch with us. You can find the next series on our Facebook and Instagram, which is both at everybodyblack.blk. There you can sign up for our mailing list as well as join us. And also after this, feel free to reach out with us with any questions, or if you want to get involved, at info.everybodyblack@gmail.com. All of that information will be at the end of this conversation as well. Christina, will you lead us in to our village rules?
I shall. So we created some house rules to set the tone of each village series event. And as Kimberly said, they're all going to be a little different. So therefore, all the rules don't always apply. But we hope that we can set the tone and the vibe of this space that we're trying to create, so that it stays safe and fruitful. So let me go through those. This space is a fertile ground for creative bravery, Black voices, marginalized voices, Black leadership, and transformations. This space is not fertile ground for patriarchy, white supremacy, toxic masculinity, misogyny, homophobia, transphobia, fatphobia, racism, and any of y'all's bullshit. Okay?
It doesn't live here.
Elsewhere. We believe that what's learned here leaves here, and what's said here stays here. We must acknowledge impacts even as we assume good intentions, and also that we are all speaking in draft, because we aren't who we are yesterday, nor are we who we will be tomorrow. Shout out to Nicole Brewer on that one. The energy is contagious. We feed off of your energy, so please react with us. Feel free to jump in the chat, and yeah, expressive viewing is encouraged. So please don't censor yourself. This is not the place for that. And yeah, that we can work on claiming our space by providing space for others. Alrighty, and then, so I think those are all of our rules.
Yes.
We will ask questions and pose thoughts throughout this entire conversation. So again, please feel free to jump into the chat and play along with us.
Yeah, there will also be a space for us to answer those questions. So I better look through that chat and see a bunch of basically your favorite moments from this movie.
Alrighty, so without further ado, let's jump in.
We're here. So we do not have our first panelist. I hope that she is all right, Jocelyn Prince, but we do have Lauren Whitehead with us today. So I will read how dope she is. Okay. Lauren Whitehead is a writer, performer, and dramaturg. She writes in several forms, including poetry, nonfiction, adaptations, and drama. Whitehead adapted Ta-Nehisi Coates' award-winning memoir, Between the World and Me, for staging at the Apollo Theater and at the Kennedy Center for Performing Arts, directed by Camilla Forbes. Her most recent performances include originating the lead role of Unsung in the opera We Shall Not Be Moved, which she performed at the Wilma Theater, the Apollo Theater, and the Stadsschouwburg Theater in Amsterdam, directed by Bill T. Jones. Whitehead is a Sundance Theater Lab Fellow, a Sundance Talent Forum Fellow, and she has worked as a dramaturg at Hedgebrook and at the Denver Center for Performing Arts. Her writings have been published in Apogee Journal, Winter Tangerine, and in selected anthologies, including Breakbeat Poets, Volume 2, Black Girl Magic. In addition to teaching creative writing workshops across the country, Whitehead is also an assistant arts professor of drama at NYU Tisch School of the Arts.
Nice.
How dope to have you here.
Yes, thanks for joining us, Lauren. What a
I'm
pleasure.
so happy to be here. Thank you.
I'm so excited for us to jump into this. So let's get in. Christina, please.
Shall we set it off, as they say? I don't have to do it anymore. I just wanted to get in once. All right. So for the last few months, Everybody Black, the group, has been in deep conversation about how we can change and improve the theater industry. So naturally, the concept of Black female leadership has come up a ton. And although we have a lot of examples, we were kind of hard pressed to find like an example of a group of Black women. And then almost in unison, the movie Set It Off came to mind. And shortly after, we realized that our first viewing of it was a little different than our 2020 experiences in it. So Lauren, I was wondering if you could speak on your first encounter with Set It Off when it first came out, and how your memory of the movie might differ from the reality of it, if it does at all.
Yeah, so to be quite honest with you, can't remember the first time I saw it, because I want to be like, I saw it when it came out. I saw it in the movie theaters, but I was like 12, and I know my mama was like not going for that. So part of me wishes I could locate a memory of when I first saw it, but I do, it did make, whenever it was that I saw it, it did make a profound impression on me. And I don't know if it was like the vision of Black women controlling their destiny, if it was a sort of, maybe it was just like Queen Latifah being queer, and we had always thought that, Queen Latifah was queer, and maybe this is some kind of confirmation, and also some kind of like signal that, oh, wow, what's this feeling inside of me, right? And I think that there's, whatever it was, it made all these impressions on me. And so when I was invited to come to this panel, talk about Set It Up, I was like, yeah, girl, of course, like an iconic film, with an empowering film for Black women. And then it was, rewatching it, I was like, oh, now that I'm a grown up, is this an empowering film for Black women? Like, what is it about this film that made such an impression on me? And why am I having such a different feeling about it now? So I do think that there's something about it that is delicious and made a serious imprint on me. But in my adult years, I'm now wondering, like, if I had a daughter, would I want her to be finding empowerment in this film? So I have mixed feelings about it. And I think that is probably a good thing, but it's just very different from how I remembered or how I thought about the film. I thought about it in this very warm and fuzzy place. Yeah. And now I'm just not so sure it's very warm and fuzzy. You know what I'm saying?
Is there a particular moment that you remember that you used to hold with like positive views that has specifically shifted a moment in the movie?
I mean, I think that the moments that I remember the most were, of course, spoiler alert, Cleo getting shot, dying in what I thought was a very heroic manner back then, maybe. Mm-hmm. And I also remember sort of the palpable joy that the characters were expressing after they first robbed the bank, like sort of all the moments where they're being very playful. I remember all of those. What I didn't remember was how much trauma every single one of these characters endured in order to get to those moments of joy. And so I think that's the part where I'm like, now as an adult and as a mother, I'm very much like, well, damn, this is, how much do they have to endure before they have a single moment of joy in this, And so, so I think that's the difference. Like, I remember the fellowship, I remember the sisterhood. I seem to have blocked out, and I remember the heroics maybe, and I seem to have blocked out all the trauma, all the rage, all the sort of destructive sisterhood that they displayed for each other as well. Like, I seem to put that in a different place in my mind.
Yeah. I just want to quickly welcome our other panelist, Jocelyn Prince. It says Christina Franklin because it's 2020 and Zoom. So this beautiful face here is Jocelyn Prince. I'm just going to read your bio really quick so people who know who you are. Pronouns she, her, hers, and they, them, theirs. Jocelyn is a principal at ALJP Consulting. She is also on faculty in theater and performance studies at Northwestern University, and associate member with Beehive Dramaturg Studio, New York City. Jocelyn is a graduate of Bradley University and Northwestern University, and has worked with theaters across the country, including Steppenwolf Theater Company, the Public Theater, Court Theater, Woolly Mammoth Theater Company, Cleveland Playhouse, and Yale Repertory Theater. Jocelyn is a frequent staffer and volunteer with the Democratic Party. She was a staff field organizer for the 2008 Obama for America, 2016 Hillary for America, and 2020 Kamala Harris for the People campaigns. Go Blue. Thank you, Jocelyn. I'm so glad that you were able to join us.
Thank you for having me. I'm sorry to be late.
Look, it's 2020. We were just glad to see that you were here. So glad to have you.
Yes. And we didn't get too far in beyond introduction. So Jocelyn, we were just talking about all of our first moments, our first interactions with Set It Off, and how our impressions might have changed since that first viewing. Can you tell us a little bit about yours?
Yeah, I think my first encounter with the film is a little bit hazy. I remember that I was in high school at the time when it came out.
Mhm.
And I remember thinking that it was very funny. Like I think that when I first saw it, like particularly the first time that they rob the bank, it's so comical with the wigs and
Those shake and go wigs.
Yes.
yeah, and Stoney is trying to be polite, like everyone get down, okay, get down, and it's just, it was almost like the Three Stooges is like a comical version of the opening bank robbery. And now when I watch it, I agree with some of what Lauren says. I'm kind of slightly traumatized by it because it just reads to me now that I'm older, much darker than when I was younger.
Yeah, I think that's right. We had the exact same impression at in our conversations, and we are, Christina and I, this is a very generational conversation too. This movie came out in 1996. I was 6 years old. My first response to it was probably on USA when I was like 13. And we all had these same world, warm and fuzzies. And I just keep saying that 2020 vision, this movie hits different. Like it is a very different experience. So we will get into all those moments throughout this conversation. But Janae, can you bring us to our first clip that we have for the people?
Alrighty, DJ Janae.
Hey, Darnell, I didn't know you had an account here. As a matter of fact, I never even saw you out of the project.
Shut the fuck up. Empty the fucking truth. Empty the truth.
Next in line, please. I just have a straight.
Darnell, don't do this. Come on. Stop.
What? Playing? It's like a fucking game. Empty the fucking truth.
Hell no. I want nothing to do with this.
Everybody get on the fucking floor now! Get the fuck on the floor! Give him the money! Get your ass down! Give him the money! Come on! Let's get this money, baby! Now! Get your ass! Shut up!
Give him the money.
Lay your ass there! Stay there! Hurry up!
No! No!
Pull it up! Give him the money, bitch! Yeah, hurry up, goddammit! I said hurry up! Give him everything! Everything!
What a way to start a movie, huh?
Right in there.
My partner watched it for the first time last night, and he was just like, wait, I did not think that this is how this was going to go. So let's jump in. Let's talk about this. Who are these women and what are they up against? I think that we were really struck in our older vision of watching this show, of watching this movie, of the ways in which these women are let down, not just by their community, but systematically. So Jocelyn, can you start with the ways in which you saw the many ways that these women are let down? Who are they?
My goodness. Well, I mean, I think first of all, you can just look at this scene and kind of draw conclusions about who Frankie is. You know, Frankie is someone who's trying to do the right thing. She's got a good job. You know, she is, you know, trying to earn a living for herself and to have some dignity. And, you know, one of the most striking things about the scene right after that is her being berated and yelled at by this white man. And she's this, you know, white police officer, while she's sitting there having been traumatized by this, literally covered in blood. And she's getting yelled at and screamed at because she didn't protect this bank's assets when she had a gun in her face. And just that kind of going through that trauma and then being re-traumatized by that. It's like she's being let down by her employer. She's being let down by the police department. Like, no one is there to protect her, to offer her comfort or assistance. Despite the fact that Frankie is clearly someone who's trying to do the right thing, trying to carve out a place in the world for herself.
Yeah. That kind of an iconic line too. What's the procedure when you have a gun to your head, which she says at the end, which feels like this sad metaphor for Black life. What's the procedure when you have a gun to your head?
Right.
I think there's something also interesting about the scene that follows this, which is that in thinking about the ways that Black women are let down, I think that one of the more like deft sort of directorial choices and camera angles is when the sort of like police woman is in the foreground, but she's blurry, and Frankie is in the background, and then you see in this sort of blurry image this police woman who's a Black woman or a woman of color at the very least having a sip of water, and sort of Frankie walks up to her afterwards and like, you didn't even ask me if I was thirsty. So like there's this world in which not only did she lose her job for not protecting the Capitol, right, but she's also not even offered any kind of solace from a person who's supposed to be on her side. And so there's the way that this institution doesn't make space for them to have any human need in there when they're in this place of like extreme trauma.
Yeah. Let's move on to our next favorite, Stoney. Miss Jada, who honestly, I'm like, who cares? All of these women are giving the performances of their lives, truly.
Her Oscar nomination.
I know, like, please give them their flowers. But so we have Stoney, we have TT, we have Cleo, and we have Frankie. I was struck by watching this again, we watched it last night, of the need to get these women to the place, right, where there is no other choice but to rob a bank. So can we talk about these characters one by one, of what is at stake for them and how are they betrayed? Let's start with Stoney. Lauren?
I mean, it's really hard to think about Stoney without thinking about the choices that she makes from the very beginning, right? Like, here's this older man who runs a car dealership, who, you know, her little brother, you know, she doesn't have parents. Her parents have died, and her little brother is trying to get into college, or so she thinks, right? And, you know, so she has sex with the man who she doesn't want to have sex with in order to secure a check to get her brother into college, right? So that's already a choice made out of desperation, a choice made from a powerful place, a place of like giving up, you know, I have no qualms with sex work, but it's also because of her limited options, right? Because of the lack of access to capital, because of the lack of safety net, she makes this choice. So from the very beginning, we see her in a place where she's the only one that's working to secure a future for her family, and she has to do so in these ways that betray her own sense of dignity and her own sense of power. So that first betrayal for her is something that she's done to herself. And that to me is a very painful moment in the film, right? Where she is in the shower trying to scrub off that memory, right? Because you can tell that she, you know, has betrayed herself in that moment in a way that is profoundly painful for her and really hard to watch, frankly, you know, her trying to make the decision to do that.
Jocelyn, I know you had that was a part that you first brought up in our initial conversation.
Yeah, I think I just also would point out, I think she's also betrayed in some ways by her brother, who lies to her and says that he got into UCLA and he didn't. Yeah, I mean, Stoney is, you know, a character that is just very vulnerable to sexual exploitation for a lot of different reasons, monetary reasons. And I think, though, that Stoney, to me, strikes me as the dreamer of the group. I think that she you know, really dreams of a world, living in a world that's completely different from her own. Whereas I think the other characters are a little more set in their environment. And I think that dreaming that she does is also a way for her to escape her reality, just having like that possibility, the possibilities open to her, I think is what kind of helps her get through these situations.
Yeah. Yeah. And TT, Kimberly Elise. Look at these women. They're like, what does she mean now in 2020? Lauren, what did you think of TT as mother?
I mean, there's a way in which I used to watch films where like a child was in danger and I'd be like, oh, that's an interesting plot point. And now I'm like, you know, I just can't, it's a totally different situation.
Yeah.
My imagination, the horror in my imagination is much more broad now that I have a small child of my own. And I think that, you know, it's hard, it's really hard to divorce that reality of the working parent from my own reality in 2020, where there's no such thing as childcare, where it's really like bring your child to work all the time, where the options are very limited for safety reasons and also for monetary reasons. Like, you know, it costs $2,200 a month for your kid to go to daycare in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
That's a second rent, you know what I mean? And so when you think about that kind of thing, you know, so her desire for money, particularly when it comes to her ability to take care of her child in the way that she wants to, is, you know, it's really hard to watch that. But I also think, you know, her sort of the building of her character as sympathetic is really sort of remarkable in her soft-spokenness and her sort of meek, and how meek she is, and also in her sort of simple desire to be able to take care of her child. Like, that's what makes her storyline incredibly heartbreaking in the end. But I think that's the woman for whom the system has failed the most, right? Like, all she needs is simple things in order to take care of herself. She needs for taxes not to be taken out of her paycheck at a rate that's unreasonable, right? She needs safe and reliable childcare, and she just wants to go to work. She doesn't even want that much. She just wants to be able to show that she cares for her child and to get her child back. And the system fails her profoundly in that way, you know?
Yeah, and this, in my most recent viewing, I was drawn to specifically who let them down, but the Black women who let them down along the way, and moments where they also let down Black women. That's interesting. So that the scene where the CPS worker was very much like, well, the baby got hurt, so therefore the baby is going to go with us, was heartbreaking, because it was just another reminder that, oh, they truly don't have anyone except each other. Yeah, Jocelyn, did you have a thought on that?
Yeah, no, I just say the powers that be in this movie are just very harsh towards these women, from the police officers to you know, their employers. Like, all of the sort of authority figures are all incredibly harsh for these women. There's very little compassion or understanding. There's a desire to sort of get them, you know, go after them. And yeah, it just really highlights desperation for me. That's what I think about the choices that they make. It's all just so desperate, and just kind of like, any choice is bad, you know, any choice that you have to make is not a good one. So, you know, what do you do?
Yeah. For our viewers, if you are a Black woman and you saw this when it came out or at any point in your life, please put in the chat what this did for you. I can only imagine. I mean, so I was 27 3 years ago. I think this movie came out when my mom was in her 20s. If I saw this when I was in my 20s, I don't know if I would be standing after the film because of these things where it's like, by God's grace, there go I, you know? It feels so tragic to watch them go through this without any choices.
Yeah.
I think also when watching this and putting it in the now, this protect Black women, hashtag protect Black women conversation that's happening online, and the ways in which it's very much in conversation with that. Jocelyn or Lauren, whichever, who wants to begin, can you talk about the ways it hit you right now, how it just seems sadly timeless?
I mean, the Black women in this, the four main characters are incredibly unprotected. They're not protected by the men in their lives. They're not protected by the social services that are supposed to be there for them. And it's really sad and depressing that that's still a movement here in 2020. So many years later, we're still talking about how to protect Black women from violence. Just the sheer amount of violence and trauma that Black women carry around. I mean, if you think about our rates of sexual assault, of childhood sexual abuse, all of the things that are so difficult about being a Black woman in society are just really highlighted and really striking in the film.
Yeah. Lauren?
I don't, I'm trying to have faith I have incredible amounts of faith in us and incredible amounts of pride in what we are able to endure and still show up this way, like radiant and gorgeous and stunning and intelligent and bright and talented, and you know what I mean? Like,
keep going.
Here we are, right? Here we are. And yet the quality of our strength, the undeniability of that strength has seemed to only create more manners and mechanisms for our destruction, right? Like, no matter how much we adapt and pivot and give you red lipsticks, right? There's always somebody that's telling us that we shouldn't wear them. So I feel like there's a way in which the film is showing us that, right? Like the coalition that they built. I'm thinking very specifically of Stoney in the moment that she loses her brother. She comes out of the bathroom and she's like, been thrown up for days. And her sister's like, I don't want to be here anymore. Like giving you the performance of a lifetime, right? Giving you grief.
Yeah.
And the only thing she has there are her sisters, right? Yeah. That's it. And so the way that we stand up for each other, the way that we protect each other is unquestionable, right? So something about that movement to protect Black women is to get other people to recognize our value.
Yeah.
And I don't know what we have to do to get other people to recognize our value, right? We show up in all these impeccable and incredible ways all the time, and yet you still question our value. And so that's the thing where I'm like, yes, the film is useful in the ways that it shows us reaffirming our value and protecting each other, right? In a system and a set of systems where even when the people in power are Black, right? There's something about the institutions being represented by other Black people, the Black police officer, the Black CPS worker, even when the institution is represented by Black people, we still only have us, right? To protect us. And so I think that there's something that's like, just a reminder, boo, like you might as well go ahead and get in coalition with us because we're stunning and we're beautiful and we're strong. And yet the mechanisms and the manners that they try to destroy us are only going to continue to be more innovative. And so we have to continue to innovate ourselves, right? That's how I feel about it.
Lauren, come on, take us to church. Why not?
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, she said you might as well get in coalition with us. You might as well.
It's safe over here for a time being.
As you were talking, I was thinking about that scene where they're acting out The Godfather.
Yes.
Planning the night, they're the Italian family, planning things.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and I think in a film way, because right now the films that we get, yes, everyone's like, the Godfather scene is iconic, so good, yes, in the chat, so funny. And I think a scene that brings us joy, right? And brings us, because I was struggling with, okay, they are so often let down, but what are the ways in which they build each other up? How do they even get to the end? It's because of them. And Lauren, actually, I found out that the scene that you're talking about is a deleted scene in some of the versions. So if you guys don't know what she's talking about, you can find it on YouTube. I think it's called Sister Sorrow. It's quoted as Sister Sorrow on YouTube, and it's a deleted scene of Stoney coming out of the bathroom after the death of her brother. And I was like, why did they delete this? Because it's truly tragic, and it centers, right, that they are the foundation of her. That's the only way she stands, is because of them.
Right. And I just remember being, I don't remember how I came in contact with this movie first, but it was at the same time of Color Purple. And I remember just thinking like, okay, cool. So Black women have no choices, but you have to become strong enough to either endure, as Celie did, or change your circumstances. And I don't know, there's truth in that, and there's non-truth in that, but there's something, I think that speaks to like the heroism of this, that I still think exists, that the demise was rough for all of them, but to see Black women have agency over their choices and agency over their circumstances and flip that coin was really exciting and powerful.
Yeah, let's jump into those choices. Janae, bring us to our next. Yes, my mother, She Rose, yes. Bring us into our next clip. Janae, have to bring us a little bit forward so you won't get to see the whole clip.
Cleo.
Yes.
Moi. And TT. TT? She ain't getting a cut.
Look, Frank, I ain't for your shit tonight, all right? TT needs it more than any of us.
Look, she didn't do anything. She walked out.
Who the fuck cares? She was there.
No, fuck that. She didn't do nothing, so she ain't getting nothing. Forget it.
Frankie, I don't want your money. Now, if you want to kick my ass, then come on, let's just get it over with, because I am sick of your shit. I need that money.
It ain't you I'm mad at. Damn. I'm sorry I was tripping. You're my girl.
I need this.
You are so special, Frankie.
Still ain't do shit.
So good, so good. I think I just want to jump into this scene and also jump into this question of, what is this movie telling us about, or attempting to tell us, right, about Black women and self-determination? I think there's something beautiful about Vivica A. Fox, full stop, but also just the way, I only can keep describing it as her rage. It like leaves her, body in that moment. And it's almost like she finally sees her sisters around her again. So I just want to jump into this. We talked about it briefly, and I'm not going to try and lead us, but I hope we get there. Lauren, self-determination and Black women in this film. What is it trying to say?
I want to take a moment to just appreciate the way that Vivica A. Fox was combing her little hair in the back here, like giving you side eye and all full neck. Like that, I'm talking about acting, okay? Like nobody told her to do that.
Yes, that was a choice.
That's some professional shit. Yeah, that is really like, that's, you know, a Black woman being like, let me step into my back here. So anyway, so that's, I had to rewind that like a couple of times. I was trying to explain to my white husband why that was so iconic. That if you're combing your hair to the side and looking at your face, that really means that you're in some kind of feeling. But anyway, I think, I'm sure he knows it in other ways. Anyway, I think that something about this scene that is that, I mean, we could talk about self-determination, but I think what I want to point out about this scene that feels most sort of present to me is the way that Frankie has for a moment lost herself in that capitalistic drive, in that like, we set out to do this thing together because we're all in untenable situations that we have no choice but to change. And yet there's something about her that, like, you know, sort of the capitalist jumped out, where she was like, you got to work for what you get, and you didn't do no work, right? Even though these are women who know that it doesn't actually matter how hard you work, you never really secure, you know, the capital or the means of production, right? You never really can. So there's something about that moment where you see Frankie, who's gonna be the one, along with Cleo, that end up driving them, you know, in that Shakespearean way toward their ultimate destruction. But there's something about that moment where she loses sight of what the original goal was, which is about finding ways for them to determine for themselves, and instead becomes lost a little bit in the power and potential of capital, right? The power and potential of money.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you said it out loud, Shakespearean, because I couldn't get that out of my head when watching this, that I felt like it's always tragic to watch something where clear mistakes are being made, where that capitalist jumps into their bodies, where you know, they start to fight each other, where the money changes them, right? And then those clues that there's no way that this can end well. Jocelyn, what did you think of this scene? Oh, now I'm just gonna get, oh God, just that part now is stuck in me.
What Lauren just said about Frankie sort of coming out of herself and getting beside herself a little bit, because you do start to see the beginnings of the sort of piling on of, we did this first one, well, now we need more money, we have to do the second one, and now we need more money and we're in trouble now, so we got to do the third one, you know. And you can kind of see the beginnings of that, you know, with that, like that greed, a little bit of the greed. I think it's interesting that self-determination is in this film is so much about money. Like whether or not you're able to keep your child, whether or not you're able to help your family with their education, you know, whether or not you can leave the city, like everything is so based and wrapped around money. And it's like, you wonder what these characters might be like if they had all of the money in the world. Like, how would they want to live their lives if they didn't have to make these desperate choices? You know, these women are creative, you know, and, you know, what could they have created? What could they have made, you know, if they weren't stuck in this box?
Yeah, my partner watched it last night and he was like, it reminds me of Breaking Bad. And I don't know if you guys have seen Breaking Bad, but it's a television show about a teacher who gets cancer, who then becomes a drug dealer because he can't pay for his treatment. And it's like, what would happen if actually this country gave something like universal childcare, or you know, that somebody wasn't impoverished, like simple as that? Well, the movie wouldn't happen, you know? So how can we dream up this life for these women where this is just how it is? I also want to talk about, just from a movie perspective and a Shakespearean way, the mistakes that were made throughout, from the first robbery to the last. There were some things that I think big fans of this movie see and are like, no. What do you think? What do you guys think those are? Because I have my list. Come on, y'all, you know. How many times was Cleo gonna throw those CDs out the window before she left?
Yeah.
Every time.
Take the gun away from Cleo until it's time.
I mean, Cleo's a whole thing, because also Cleo's buying like the fancy car and like all of this stuff to draw attention to herself. Huge, she quit her job, like huge mistake there.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's part of it. That's what's so Shakespearean about it. It's like, they want these simple things. Like Cleo just wants to have her car kitted out. Like, it's not actually that much to ask. I mean, you see that Cleo achieved every one of her desires with the first bank robbery on $3,000.
Yep.
right? Like it was done. You know, there was actually nothing else that Cleo necessarily wanted except that the money in some way in her mind was tied to having power, right? Was tied to, you know, and so I think the simplicity of their dreams, right? This, I don't want to say it's small because it's not small to want to be with your child, right? But the sort of the scale of it is not even greedy at the beginning. It's very much like, I just want my little brother to be able to pay this down payment at UCLA. I just want to be able to show the judge that I have enough money to get childcare. I just want my car to stop being laughed at in the neighborhood, right? Like, so there's something about these things that is so small, that when the greed comes, you think, oh man, couldn't you just be glad that you got away with the first one? Couldn't you be glad that you got away with that botched robbery and that you got your car fixed and that you can show the judge you got a little money in your pocket? Like some things about it. And so I really think about, when I think about Shakespeare and when I think about like Oedipus, when I think about classic Aristotelian drama, like forgive me to get on my dramaturgy horse for a second, but when we look at like, here I am, right? When we look at Titi, like all she wants is enough money to show that she's a responsible enough parent to get her child back. Yeah. And the way in which she's chosen to do this ends up being that her child is alone forever. Yeah. Her child is indefinitely lost in the system that she was trying to get him out of, right? And so that's the thing, that's classic tragedy, right? Yeah. You're trying so hard to avoid the fate that you end up walking directly into the fate in the worst possible way. And so, you know, the original mistake is thinking about theft and robbery and violence as a means of getting yourself out of circumstances that are created because of theft and robbery and violence, right? Like,
yeah. Oh, yes. Okay. And I want to talk too about this connection that we talked briefly about, which I don't know if everybody sees it. It may just be my eyes, but this sort of this connection between their choices and like a connection of masculinity, that they like see these men do these robberies and they sort of take on these masculine identities. You can see it very quickly in Frankie. I think it happens that just like you said, she like kind of puts it on and then it softens in her. And they seem to be this nice spectrum between like Kimberly Elise to Cleo, you know, to Queen Latifah. And I don't want to put capitalism on masculinity, but I can and I will. But yeah, I do want to jump into the chat and give our viewers 5 minutes. Janae, I can see it, I think.
You can, so Liv,
yes. So it's one from my mom. Hi, mommy. She says, I think that we are indoctrinated to see these other women as others, which is the problem. Okay, so these women who were a part of the system, I believe. But at the same time, they were heroes. Oh no, I'm sorry. But at the same time, they were heroes because they fought the system. All fought, but all could not survive the fight. Yeah. Casey says, when I first watched the film, it made me want to act down. Now in 2020, it definitely hits differently because I feel pain so strongly / personally. Yeah. I think this is a film white people should watch along with other Black films as research. Honestly, absolutely. And I feel like what was poignant to me about this is that there is no like Black people against white people in the Black movies that we get now, of like, this is not 12 Years a Slave, so white people can't watch it and be like, well, I'm just gonna not own slaves, or I'm just gonna not be racist. How can you actively work to dismantle these systems that are against these women?
Right, and just to speak to a little bit of, I love what Kessie said, and speaking to what Lauren said earlier, of when I first watched it, it felt heroic because these women were fighting these, what to my brain felt like imaginable or larger issues, right? But now as an adult, it's like, oh, childcare? Oh, you want to do very like basic human rights? So Kessie says it hits differently because she feels pain so strongly. I totally connect to that because I'm like, oh, I don't know how far away I am from figuring out who my set it off team is in 2020 America.
Yeah. We have Shanice, absolutely a tragedy. I felt overwhelmed, I think, because from the beginning, you basically know it's not going to be okay. So you go through the whole film watching them make decisions to try and continue to survive when you know inevitably it will still end the same. Does that make sense? It feels so much like tragic fate. Yeah. Yeah. To shout out to a very good show called Hadestown, which was on Broadway. We'll sing it again and again and again. There is something about it that it's like, you know, you have to just go through it over and over again, no matter what, you know, the fate will be.
Yeah, and is it worth it? We talked about, I don't want to jump the gun a little bit, but we talked about Cleo's death, right? And like the visceral feelings of it, but also the fact that if she could have designed her own death, it might have looked just like that, right? So with Hadestown and with this, the tragedy is inevitable, but how much is it worth it because of that moment of love or because of that moment of agency of changing things around? It's an impossible question, but worth exploring.
Thank you all for putting those in. And I can't wait to talk to more people about this film. And you all should definitely, if you do not know Hood cinema, jump in. Now is the time, especially you white folks, because stop asking me if I've seen Waiting for Guffman when you ain't seen Friday yet. Stop doing it.
That's true. That's
Janae, can you bring us in to our last clip? Can you all guess what it's going to be? Everybody guess right now in the chat. Just kidding.
Cleo! Sit.
Man, I remember you was just a little scrub, always trying to follow us around.
Ooh, that's my song. Brandy Chaka Khan. Let's talk about this scene. Let's give this scene the energy that I think it deserves, honestly.
What a journey.
Lauren, what was your reaction seeing it again? Because this is one of those scenes, I mean, if you are on the TikTok, if you are on, you know, the internet at all, so many people get in front of their cameras and cut off their fake braids. What was it like seeing this scene again after you hadn't seen this movie in a really long time?
Right, so we talked about this, right, in our sort of like meet and greet about what we were going to discuss. And I think that part of the nostalgia that I feel about this film is a profound nostalgia for the soundtrack, girl. Like the music. The music is like a principal player in this thing, because I keep thinking about like 1996. This was pre-Netflix. This was pre-streaming. This was like, if you wanted to watch the movie again, you had to be lucky at the Blockbuster.
Yep, Blockbuster.
You had to be lucky that it was still there. You picked up the box and the box was full and you'd be like, yes, I get to watch, set it off again. There was no repeat viewing. And so I think there's something about what we did repeat, when we had access to repetition of, was you know, Brandy, Tamia, Gladys, and Chocolate, right? Like we had repeated access to En Vogue singing Don't Let Go. We had repeated access to these other coalitions of women that made us feel some kind of way. They made us feel nostalgic for the experience of the film itself, even if we couldn't remember what it was about the film. And so I think when I got to this moment, I was like, oh yeah, no wonder I think of them as heroes, because they are, right? But mostly they're villains, right? It's all complicated. I go back and round. But there's something about the fact of those the iconic music from this soundtrack comes in these moments, in these tender places, right, where I feel a tenderness toward the music, right? And at the same time, I'm like, okay, so Jade about to go in the drop top Jeep and fly off into the sunset. But I really hope there's a therapist at the end of the block. I really hope that my homegirl is going to have some mental health, some counseling to deal with the fact that everybody in her life is gone.
Lauren, what year did we say this was? 1996?
You know what I'm saying? There's no therapist. Like, I don't care how far away you get, how much money you have in the bag. There's no way that the trauma is not going to catch her. So even if she's not going to get caught by the police, it's the trauma. So it's hard for me to divorce the nostalgia that I feel and the nostalgia that the film is asking us to feel about the characters as a whole and their coalition as a whole, that helps to try to like erase the trauma of it. You know, I know she's laugh crying, she's giving you big Jada acting, but at the same time, it's really hard to be like, she's going to be just fine because she got about $75,000. I'm like, no, that's not enough for the therapy bill. So I feel like very complicated, because we're in a moment where finally Black people can embrace mental health services the way that we've always needed to.
Yeah.
But I just want that for her. What I want for her at the end of the road is a very like kind Black therapist, right?
Yeah.
And what I know she's going to have is like nothing, you know, and that's hard.
I just imagine that Seal song playing, like continuing to go, and then she's opening the door to a therapist. Jocelyn, your feelings?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, the nostalgia is also in that scene, of course, coming from Stoney. She's getting nostalgic about her friendship with the women. I love that scene when they're on the rooftop together. I think that's a beautiful scene of the sisterhood. And I think that throughout all of this, from start to finish, these women always support each other. They're there for each other. They take care of each other. And even when one gets a little shady with the other one, they still come back together, even if it takes one of the women getting the other woman just kind of to come back in line. So yeah, I think that what I like about that scene, if you can like it, because it is very horrific, is just that it highlights, the sisterhood that was throughout the film.
Yeah.
And to your point earlier, Jocelyn, about how money is king throughout this and how that's off-putting in a lot of ways, in a visual way, or I don't know, maybe borderline corny, but whatever. It shows us right there at the end, like what actually matters, right? Because she, like we said, is sitting on all this money, but reflecting on what actually mattered and igniting in us the good times in the movie. So I think it's, as corny as that is, I do think it's a good lesson to leave the movie on.
It's also showing us what it cost.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. What it literally cost.
What it literally cost for her to be able to have the ability to travel and to determine some future for herself. Right. And that's the thing where it's like, is it worth it? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I do want to get into the relationships of these films, this side relationships that just make me cackle, because in the end, they continued to choose themselves. But there was a few people who made appearances. Our good girl Ursula and Blair Underwood.
In and out.
I do want to give some time to Blair Underwood, because I want to hear what y'all think. I'm sure I agree. I'm sure I agree, because I was watching it again with my partner. He was like, "Oh, Keith," and I was like, "Shut up."
And also Blair is there, but
right, exactly.
Mostly
I mean,
feel
I think Keith
skincare
is.
routine, Blair. Like, what's the product that you're using on the immaculate black skin, Blair?
That one, first of all, everyone had Slicky Downy. I mean, even Jada Smith, when she cut out her braids, her hair was not an afro, but and I was like, where did you find the eco styler for all that, sis, in Mexico?
There were some continuity errors. But that's
yeah. But let's give Keith Blair Underwood his time. That's 90s glam. Absolutely, mommy.
Yeah, I mean, Keith is selling the dream. She's selling a dream to Stoney. There's this like Cinderella pretty woman moment that they have when she goes to the cocktail party. Dressed. He takes her to go buy a dress because he doesn't like what she's wearing. I mean, there's something very like sexist, embedded in that entire relationship. But I definitely see why Stoney is taken by him, because she is a dreamer and he does present for her a world that is outside of her current environment. I mean, I'm struck when he takes her out to dinner and she lets him know she's never even been out of Los Angeles. So I think he represents to her a cosmopolitan worldliness that she just doesn't get.
Yeah, Lauren.
Yeah, I mean, and I think there's also like his proximity and facility to white capitalist hetero patriarchy, right? Like that's all there. He works at a bank. Yeah. He went to Harvard. His number one friend in the movie is this white guy that's like, ooh, she's pretty. There's all these things where his access to his refinement is based on his proximity to whiteness, right? And so that's not lost on me at all. That kind of like Ivy League, Black people need to plan for the future kind of bootstrapping ass mentality is also something that is just a different representation of like, how do Black folks begin to self-determine, right? They're having a bit of a like, I don't know, he's giving you like a little bit of Booker T and WB Talented 10 at the same time, right? Like I am an exceptional Black man and I worked for it. And if Black people would just plan for 5 years ahead of we could all have it, right? And then you walk into his apartment and it's all kinds of Afrocentric, like, it's just giving you the very version of like what it means to be a successful Black person. Yes. And it's also telling you that the closer you can get to whiteness and to capital, the more likely you are to like have made it, and so I think it's just another thread of the same story.
Yeah, he literally has a painting in the back of a Black man coming out of white concrete. I saw that yesterday and I was like, Keith, you can get this out of your house. Yeah. But I found him very condescending for most of it, which I think is, a bit of the point of like, I don't think we're supposed to believe that Jada is ever going to choose him. Yeah. But he tried very hard being like, you've never been to Mexico? I'll make you Mexican food. It's like, and 1 minute for In Vogue though. That don't let go scene, I mean, come on. Everybody got out the baby oil, I'm sure, in the 90s.
So sexy, right? Like it's so sexy, the falling into that dream. And it's similar with Cleo and like, her silent femme wifey. Like, why can't she say anything in the movie? That's so weird to me, but also incredibly sexy. This like, there is something I appreciate about the Black women's sexuality here that's on the spectrum that is maybe something that was rare for the 90s, right? To be showing queer representation in a way that I was going to say wasn't problematic, but I got to think back about whether or not I believe that. But to just see it at all is something that was very, I think, probably shocking for people. Mm-hmm. And to see it in such a way where the girlfriends are like, there she is again, right? With her, buying sexy underwear, no more sexy underwear for your wifey, that kind of thing. And so I feel like there is something sexy about the movie and romantic about the movie, both in its like, its willingness to let friendships be romantic and also to let, erotic relationships be romantic as well, I feel like.
Yeah. I do want to jump back into the soundtrack. Let's talk about it. I gave my top 5 songs on our Instagram yesterday. I had the best time. The fact that Ray J sounds exactly like Brandy is, I'm like, that's a Brandy song. But let's hear, what are you, do you guys have songs that you remember? Also, I just want to note that the score is different from the soundtrack, which is sad. But are there songs that you guys like really remember or know any? Jocelyn, it's okay. We might play DJ for 2 minutes right now.
Muted. I'm like Googling soundtrack on my phone to remember what the songs are.
I mean, I think Missing
Oh, Don't Let Go.
Yeah,
is
Don't
the
Let
one I
Go was
remember.
probably a
Yeah.
#1 hit in 1996. Like Missing You was probably on the Billboard charts in 1996. I mean, these are the hits I remember, hearing on the radio over and over and over again. And this is what I mean, that there's something about Set It Off that's like, oh yeah, Brandy and Tamia and Chaka Khan, and that's not the movie, right? The movie is not, it's not En Vogue in those black slick outfits, like singing the house down. That's not the movie. That's the music video that I remember very nostalgically and very warmly, right? And it's very different than what happens in the film. And so I think, the soundtrack is as much a cultural icon as the image of those women on the rooftop smoking a blunt and joking around with each other,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the R&B juxtaposed with the violence of the film is very interesting. It's like the film is more gangster rap in terms of music, and the R&B is where the soundtrack lives. So it's like a really interesting mashup, and I think that it actually makes the movie a little bit more palatable. Like if all of the music was super just kind of like hard edged, I think it would make it even more difficult to watch the film. But I think that this R&B music sort of softens it and makes it more accessible.
And maybe even makes it more feminine, like femme. Like I makes it like, it brings it into a more womanly realm in some way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to shift to talking about that and their deaths, specifically because the song that is the chase, and mostly the song that Cleo dies to, is Up Against the Wind, Laurie Perry. And I don't know if you know these lyrics, I'm going to read some of them, but when you talk about like these women's deaths and the music behind it, it's like just watching a bird die. It's so beautiful and sad. So she sings, day after day seems like I push against the clouds. They just keep blocking out the sun. It seems since I was born, I've wakened every blessed morning, down on my luck and up against the wind. Don't you stop, don't you run, don't you cry. You'll do fine, you'll be good, you'll get by. Night after night seems like I rage against the moon, but it don't ever light the dark. I curse the falling rain, but it won't stop for my complaining. Down on my luck and up against the wind. Don't you stop, don't you run, don't you cry. That is a song that Cleo dies to.
Don't stop and also don't run.
Don't cry.
And also don't cry in the meantime. Oof.
Let's talk about these women's deaths, because I feel like not only that they died, but how they died is something that I was stuck with, even I think as a child, and it kept with me. Jocelyn, what are your feelings of that long, epic chase scene into their murders?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most horrifying thing is the way that Cleo dies. It's like the violence is just on a whole nother level as far as how she dies. And it's like, you have to wonder, I think it's interesting the way Christina was talking about, like, did she want to die that way? Did she prefer to die that way? Like, just listening to the lyrics of the song, this like, take this violence, but don't cry, don't run away, just stay in this moment and deal with this trauma. And I don't know, I have mixed feelings about it. Like, there's something I think kind of like from a dramaturgical perspective, there's something satisfying about the ending, but as a Black woman watching it, it's also incredibly horrific. to see once again another woman, a Black woman, enduring that kind of violence, being dehumanized by the level of violence.
Yeah, Lauren.
Yeah, I mean, I think I also felt that moment, Christina, when you were like, if she could have designed it, would she have designed it this way? And I think that, you know, perhaps the answer is yes, right? She is doing it. Cleo is the most outspoken protector in the group throughout the entirety of the film, right? She's constantly standing up to people. She's usually the first one up, being like, you can't take our kids, you can't, she's very clear in her role as protector. And so there is something about that moment where she's like, y'all are gonna get out and run that way and I'm gonna go this way. She knows what's gonna happen on the other side of that thing, right? She takes the moment to like, give her hydraulics, she does the whole thing in the car, and then, she drives through, she lights the cigarette. I mean, I think that's one of the most enduring images for me, is that cigarette, lighting that cigarette and then putting the car into drive. And then, so I think, but there is something, like you're saying, Justin, just the sheer number of bullets, like just the absolute overkill, literally overkill, right? And her even, so this is part of the thing that where it's heroic and still horrific at the same time, right? Because you think it's over and then she gets out of the car with the Uzi and and it gets even more horrific, like as if it needed more bullets. So I think there is something about that overkill that, you hate to see, but that unfortunately is maybe accurate in a devastating kind of way. And frankly, like, I don't need to see anymore. Like, I got it. I got it. They're going to put, 90 bullets in the body. Like, okay, got it. I don't know that I need to have that imagery anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what was so hard that I felt like I needed to take to therapy, honestly, was she dies like Scarface. I mean, she dies in this way that is asking us to believe that she is a badass, a hero, a gangster. I think on the YouTube videos, her death is almost always titled "Going Out Like a G."
Yeah.
So I feel that, and almost each time I'm like, yeah. And then there's that moment where you get to see, which you don't get to see in Scarface, really, of the aftermath. That is too much. That it's like mixed with this song, this beautiful song.
Yeah, and that, Lauren, what you said something earlier that stuck out to me about Cleo's audacity and the fact that she keeps going, right? And there's almost an element of like with the robberies that like you did it once, you did what you were planning to do, but that sense of like getting greedy and impressing yourself, right? And I was watching the sequence today, and the helicopter moment, the driving through the two cars, like I fully agree that Cleo knew she was about to die, but didn't know when or how. And there was I don't want to put any positive words around this moment, but there is something epic about her being like, all right, here we go. The helicopter got out of the way and we're going to keep going. We're going to keep going. We're going to keep going for as long as possible. That's kind of why I was like, oh, Cleo wouldn't have wanted anything else. To get arrested and go to jail, that's awful. But to go out like that is incredible in ways.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's her, excuse my language, it's her final fuck you to the system, like this system that she finds to be so unjust, that is so unfair to her, it's her way of saying, even in death, fuck you,
Right. I think there's also this thing that I don't want to lose, which is that the death is public as hell. There's also this moment where the reporter is like, we've just witnessed something devastating, right? And you're like, God damn, like how many times does it have to be like the news story, the ongoing news story, the horrific and brutal death of a Black person, right? Like that's a narrative that like we know all too well. And that really is like, it was there in 1996, it's there in 2006, it's here in 2016, and it's hard for me to have faith that it won't exist in 2026, that there's something about the newsworthiness of the multitude of bullets that, you know, is a narrative that I'm just like over.
Yeah, I mean, this was right around the corner from Rodney King.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, there is, and you know, before social media where we get it basically every day. So this, what I keep calling this 2020 vision of us already being oversaturated with these exact images is difficult to bear.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, go ahead.
I feel like I just need to say something. I want to ask or raise a question about that imagery, right? Because we talked a little bit about this, like what other versions of, I mean, and maybe this is just like a question for you, Jocelyn, right? Because we were talking about what other movies came out, like what else was there, and you're getting A Preacher's Wife, you're getting Waiting to Exhale, you know, you're getting, and then you're seeing a lot of like sort of Nutty Professor, just sort of like Black buffoonery, hilarious, but Black buffoonery, and then you're getting a lot of men in these like hardcore gangster films, Dead Presidents, and like, you know, so I think there's something about this role for Black women which didn't exist before, like Black women as gangsters, as villains, right? And I keep thinking about like Carmen Maria Machado, who's saying like, you know, who was writing queer villains, but who was saying, who says like, you know, we have to be able to portray people in marginalized groups as villains, because if we don't do that, then we're sort of denying their full humanity, that like we're very protective of our imagery of people, you know, people in marginalized existences, because we don't want, because for so long the imagery has just been tied together that it's always Black men who are violent, and so we never got to see Black men who were tender, and therefore it was instructing us in some ways. And so I guess I'm just wondering, like, there's something about the imagery that if in 2020 vision, like you're saying, Kimberly, that I would like to protect, but there's something about, you know, in 1996 where I would have like killed for this kind of meaty role, right? I would have died for one of these, to die like that. I would have, as an actor, I would have loved it. I would have loved to have the opportunity to not be a woman, to be a woman who was traumatized, but then to be a woman who was fighting. And so I just wonder if that 2020 vision is taking away, Jocelyn, I wonder if it's taking away some of the power of having that opportunity in 1996 to be seen in that complicated way, right? Like, because I don't know that we have it still to be seen as so fully, like the moment of death is foolish, heroic, violent, all at once. And I wonder if there's, what the value of that is. Do you know what I'm saying?
I think so. I'm not sure. I mean, I think for me, the women are heroes, because I think that they die heroically fighting against an unjust system. And so, you know, I think that they, in a lot of ways that they went about that fight, were foolish, but they still fought valiantly against the system that left them disenfranchised, impoverished, vulnerable to sexual exploitation, financial insecurity with their employment. And they stand up to that system. You know, they do the things that you're not supposed to do. They steal money, you know, and so I think the women are sort of heroes in that sense. And I think that there's a certain nobility about Chloe Cleo that I think makes her a very meaty, interesting character. Like, so.
You're muted.
Oh, you muted.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying, I think that Cleo is an incredible character. I agree with you. She's so complex, you know, so endearing, so strong. And, you know, a powerhouse in her own way.
Yeah, it's Lauren, I'm glad you asked that, because that is our last question that I want to bring to everyone. You just knew, it felt that, you read the room. But what is the legacy of this movie? And specifically, does this movie have any stepchildren, right? Are there any more modern
grandbabies?
Grandbaby, stepchildren, Descendants, sequels, all of that. Is there a modern version or anything like that? And I just kind of going back to Cleo's death. I watched this movie very close to the first time I watched Boys in the Hood. So in my brain, I was like, Ricky, and that's awful, but there was that moment of like, cool, we can have it too. Like that really like climactic moment of I went out strong. To have that comparison between Ricky and Cleo was cool for me, but also in my age now, I'm like, oh, both are just garbage moments.
But that's what I mean. Like, what is with that desire to have that? Mm-hmm. What is with that desire to have that? And I keep thinking about Machado, who's like, because we need to be able to show the fullness of our humanity, right? But does the fullness of our humanity need to remind us of the horrifics of our death? That's the part where I'm like trying to struggle with whether or not what the value, not whether or not it has value, because obviously it does, but what the value of it is, and how to measure that in a moment where, where I'm asking myself, does this film age well, right? That's what it is.
I really wonder though, Lauren, was there something liberating to you about seeing these women, quote unquote, set it off? You and Jocelyn too. Was there something liberating about letting these women be driven into madness to do this, to do this heist? Was there something that let you enjoy that?
Absolutely. That's what I mean about it. I mean, as a person who works in drama, like your girl wanted to be one of them, has probably been in that costume several times for Halloween. Like they're so desirable. It's so profoundly desirable to lose yourself in that drive, that deeply, right? And to be that devoted to your friends in such a way that you would die for them. Like there's something so romantic about that. Both the
I was gonna say that,
and the friendships, all of it is it's almost like a romantic like there's something very romantic about the way that they die for each other and fight for each other and like fight to live. There's something really, really beautiful and lovely about that. But I think I'm just still being like, well, damn, why does the trauma that befalls them have to be the consequence of that fight? Yeah. Why does all the trauma before have to be the thing that drives them to that kind of fight and only produce more trauma at the end? Whether you're in Mexico or LA, girl, the trauma is there. So I feel like that's the thing where I'm trying to figure out, how does this movie age, right? And how do I metabolize it as a person who like is older now?
Yeah. Jocelyn, any response to that?
Oh my God, this is getting so deep.
We're gonna need like another hour for the session.
I don't know. I mean, the violence is still hard for me to watch. I still cover my eyes at certain points. I just love the sisterhood and the camaraderie that they have, and the jokes that they have together, and that history that they have with each other. Like I think about shows like Girlfriends. I think about Living Single. I think about all of these shows where you have this sort of mashup of female personalities. The four women are very different. They're very unique and specific, and how they all kind of work together and live together. Like I think that I find something really, really comforting in that. It reminds me of my own friendships with Black women, very different women, but, are still all friends. So I think that part of it is great. I still, as horrified by the violence as I was as a teenager, I'm still horrified by said violence. But the sisterhood is great.
Yeah. Last question before we end this. We want to try to end on a bit of light, if we can. But I mean, this is my dream come true personally. So again, thank you ladies for doing this. One thing that we wanted to talk about is dreaming while Black and woman. And I think Stoney is our dreamy character, obviously. But I want you guys, if you can, to give some final words about what this movie means to you about Black womanhood, agency, And I think also dreaming ourselves into the future, acknowledging that we will exist in the future. Jocelyn?
These questions are so hard. I think that it sounds cliche and corny, but I think that Black women, we're going to get through this together, and it's possible for us to move together and take care of each other while we're going through some of the most horrific things, even in death. Like, we can be sisters to each other, and you know, I think that what the movie sort of illustrates is that sometimes we're all that we have. You know, we're the people that understand what we go through. We're good at being allies to each other because of that. So that gives me hope for the future. Just, you know, this idea of being able to count on other Black women.
Yeah, thank you. Lauren?
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say the same thing. Like, the film sort of teaches us that we got us, you know, that nobody else, maybe nobody else will, but we do. And that the more energy we put into our candor, in our sisterhoods, right, in our willingness to be our full selves in the safe space of that garage, right, in our home, that the more likely we are to, like, survive all the trauma that befalls us. And so I think that's the thing that the movies really did at instructing us, is like the sisterhood is strong, the coalition is strong and enduring, right?
Yeah.
If I could just add to that as well, it's far-fetched, but it's dreamy. There's something about that moment where Frankie kind of, it pops out of her, right, really, really quick towards TT. And then she pulls it back because that was the white man capitalist speaking, right? There's something inspiring about Black leadership, Black female leadership, in that moment of the empathy of it. And I think this has been said in a million different ways by a million different people, but why Black female leadership is so important, because we've been on the receiving end of it all, so that when we're in the leadership positions, we have the ability to do it differently, because we know what it feels like to be spoken to that way. We know we can make it work without that. So, and that came today, because when we were trying to think of dreamy things that this movie inspires, I was like, right. But
it's almost too, like, Christine, in that moment, right? Like, Vivica does the exact opposite of what her boss did to her.
Right. Exactly.
Right? Because if you look at what she froze too. She was like, oh my God, the guns are coming out. I'm going to run away. You know, that's the same freezing moment that Vivica did, but she did the opposite, you know, with that money and with that situation.
And she has that critical self-reflection to be like, it's not you I'm mad at. Yep. It's not you
right.
I'm mad at.
Exactly.
Right? Like,
exactly.
She has that. And so if there's one takeaway, it's like, trust Black women.
Yes, trust Black women.
Let
exactly.
Black women lead, right? Let
exactly.
Black women lead. So that's maybe the dream on that. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Dream on that. Thank you, ladies, so much for this. This was so amazing. Panelists Lauren Whitehead and Jocelyn Prince. I mean, it's no small thing that you guys decided to do this for us. We are a small Black woman-led organization of theater artists. And the fact that you took this time to talk with us and gave your intellectual energy and also your emotional energy to us is really important. So thank you, thank you, thank you. At the end of this, you will see the Venmos of these amazing women. Please, if you enjoyed this, drop them some quarters, some nickels, a dime. Let them open up their Venmo and feel like Stony and Cleo.
I like it.
Be like, I will find a way to get through. Please support them, because this energy, intellectual property and emotional energy is really important. Let these Black women feel some extra love from you. I want to thank you all so much for being in community with us, being our viewers. Again, it is no small thing during this time that you are sharing space with us. I want to thank my team at Everybody Black, my organizing team members, Sarah Jordan, Serafina Bush, our social media leader, Tiffany Thompson, our organizing leader and DJ for today, Janae Bonnick, and my beautiful co-host, Christina Franklin.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'd like to throw that thanks right back to you, Miss Kimberly, for organizing, facilitating, and making this happen, because it's so important and such a privilege to be a part of.
Thank you. It's honestly my best life, truly. So last couple things, Everybody Black is seeking a fiscal sponsor, or as we call somebody to be our mom. So if you have any information about that, please reach out to us, and please keep following us, building with us, supporting us. Again, at the end, you will see all of our information. You can find us at everybody.blk on Facebook and Instagram, and info.everybodyblack@gmail.com. It was lovely to be in the village with all of you today. So, so lovely. And we cannot wait to gather soon. Drink water and keep rooting for Everybody Black, please. Janae, hit me with one of my favorite songs.
Nice.
The pace through the hard times. From the 9 to 5, or just the world they see. But if your boogie shoes, there's a remedy. I insist that you be down and late at a party. Yeah. I insist that you relax and let it go, baby. I insist that you believe it's gonna get better. Oh. I insist you understand right now you can't do nothing better. So let it go. Then let it. Everybody's out on the floor, don't you know? I'm gonna can't do nothing better. So let it go. Set your troubles free. Dance with me. Lose control. Let it go. Every now and then it seems hard to find. Some have lost their way of love and peace of mind. And if there's any pain or hostility,